Okay, so let's continue with Chapter 10. At the end of last video, we ended up with our critique of the network class, so let's introduce the concept of inheritance. If you open up Network version 2, you will see that there are some differences in the sets of relationships. And there is a new class called post, and there's also some new elements in our diagram in terms of having open-headed arrows as opposed to the filled head arrows. So while we have this UML diagram, let's jump to BlueJ and just see the way it appears inside of our editor. We can see that newsfeed still has a requirement. That requirement now is for this post class, and then we have this relationship between message post and post, and this relationship between photo post and post. And so this is what we're going to be looking at how these classes can be restructured. By looking at the UML diagram and taking a peek inside, seeing the fields and methods and where things have moved, it becomes evident that some of the problem was that there was a lot of code duplication between message post and photo post. Well, let's move that into a common superclass. We can call it just post. Every post has a username and a timestamp and the number of likes and comments. And every post needs to be able to do the like and unlike feature to add to the comments, to return the timestamp, and to display. What's unique about message post is that it has a message and you can get the text of the message. What's unique about photo post is that it has a file name and a caption, and you can get the image file and you can get the caption. So Java and other object-oriented languages give us the facility to break apart classes that share common elements and to create an inherited structure. In order to use inheritance, we define one superclass, and in Java, there can only be one superclass for any class. So we've named this superclass post. Now, message post and photo post become subclasses of this post class. The superclass contains all of the common attributes, that is to say, all of the common fields, and the subclasses will inherit those characteristics. So it's not, this is actually really important. The message post still has a username, timestamp, like, and comment. It has that by being a subclass of post. I just don't need to put that information down here. A photo post has username, timestamp, like, and comment, but it doesn't need to live here. It lives in the superclass, sometimes called the parent class, but more correctly called the superclass. So these subclasses will inherit those characteristics. They will also inherit those methods, so I don't need to redefine them. And it's only the parts that are unique to the subclasses that need to be defined in the subclass files. To just take a step back from inheritance, for this sample, we could think about hierarchies in other aspects of life. We can think about biological taxonomies of animals. So for instance, down here at the bottom, we could have either a poodle or a Dalmatian, but both poodles and Dalmatians are canines or dogs. And, we can have canines or we can have felines, but both of those are mammals, and mammals are one of the subclassifications of animal. On a completely different set of the hierarchy, we could have chickens, which are a bird, which is also an animal, or a sparrow, which is a bird, which is also an animal. So we have these things, like these things that are animals all share common characteristics, but there are differences between mammals and birds. With mammals, there are differences between canines and felines. Within canines, there's differences between poodles and Dalmatians. So we can, get more specific as we go down this sort of hierarchy. And we'll come back to this example when it's time to talk about the way Java constructors work. But let's return to our subclasses and our superclass, our post, message post, and photo post. In order to use inheritance in Java, we introduce a new keyword. So the post class is just a class like any other class that we have seen. Public class post. But in the subclasses, public class photo post extends post. This is what makes it a subclass. You can only ever have one extends in a single class after it in Java. So photo post is a subclass of post, message post extends post, message post is a subclass of post. Flipping the relationship around, post is a superclass, is the superclass for message post. Post is the superclass for photo post. So let's look at superclasses. Inside of this particular superclass, we would declare just what we saw in the last video. The pieces that were common to message post and photo post have now been moved into this class. The subclasses are much simpler, where they used to share a lot of variable names and types. Now the only thing that is in each subclass is the piece of the data that is unique to that subclass's needs. So the message post only has a single field of type string. The photo post has 2 fields of type string. But because they extend post, remember, they are still inheriting the username and the timestamp and the likes and comments, even though they're not explicitly listed in their source. This does lead to a question, which is, if a message post is a message post, but it also needs the information from a post, how do we get the information set up in order for our object to have all of the fields initialized? And so it is necessary to look at how constructors change a little bit when we're working with subclasses. So, for instance, here inside of the post class, there is a constructor for the post object which accepts a single string, and the single string author gets put into the username field, and then we ask our system to get the current time in milliseconds and make that the timestamp. When a post has just been created, it has 0 likes, and we have an empty array list of comments ready to be added to. But when it's time for a message post to be created, a message post requires post to be initialized because a message post is also a post. So inside of our constructor, in order for a message post to be created, a message has both an author and the text of that message. And the first thing that we're going to do when we create a message post is we are going to call the constructor for our superclass right here and pass the author on so that the post can use it. The post will go ahead and create its internal structure. The constructor will end, and then finally the text that comes in will be applied into the message field for the message post class. Let's see that happen. I'm going to come into message post. Let me set a breakpoint right here. We will make a new message post. Author demo. Watch the calls. Okay. Here's my debugger. My call sequence right now is the constructor message post initializer. I am stopping here at the call to super of author, so let me step into that. Also, we can see the two parameters, author and text, over here. If I step into the call super of author, note that I am now here inside of the constructor for post. I look at my call stack here. The first call, here was to message post constructor. I'm now here in the posts constructor. And as I step, the value that was passed to message post, which got passed along to post, is going to be used. The username field goes to the name of the author, and then we can set the timestamp. We can initialize likes. We can initialize the array. I'm done with the posts constructor. I've left the posts constructor. I'm back in the message post constructor. I'm at the line where the text to the message post will be set. And so I step, and that was done. And now the message post is done with its constructor, and I step, and the object has been created. So here's the thing. Every time you use a subclass, the superclass's instructor must be called. If you don't have a call to super, then the compiler automatically inserts one. Now, here's the thing. This only works if there is a zero parameter constructor. If your constructor requires a parameter, then you must call it explicitly, passing however many parameters are necessary with a call to super. The other thing is, you can't do any work with your object until the superclass object is created, so it must be the very first line inside of your constructor call. So, going back to our animal hierarchy, if I were going to create an object of type Dalmatian, I couldn't make the object of type Dalmatian until I made an object of type dog, but I couldn't make an object of type dog until I made an object of type mammal, and I couldn't make an object of type mammal until I made an object of type animal. Once the animal was done, then the mammal could be created. Once the mammal was created, then the dog object could be created, and once the dog object was created, then the Dalmatian could finish creating itself. So it doesn't matter how far down the inheritance hierarchy you are, you always go call the super, call the super, call the super. If there was something above animal, call the super, and then finish my work, finish my work, finish my work, and finish my work. This has the wonderful benefit of localizing where changes need to occur, but it also means that if you're coming into a project and haven't created the hierarchy, one of the hurdles that you will need to face is learning how the object hierarchy has been established, because where you think code should be will often be 2, 3, 4 levels higher than where you're expecting to find it. And so that's part of what you want to begin to train yourself to look for as you begin to inherit and work with. I want to be careful with the phrase inherit here. If you are working with a previously existing code base, then you want to make sure that you give yourself ample time to understand the structure of that code base so that you can begin to get a sense of where certain types of code should reside based on the constraints we've already talked about with responsibility-driven design and modularization and abstraction of the problem space. Before we leave this part of the lecture, what's some of the advantages to setting up this inheritance hierarchy? Well, for one thing, it becomes relatively trivial to add more types. For example, if we have messages and photos and we want to add events, well, events would have usernames and timestamps and likes and comments. So we could just create a new class that has a field to record the event type, and our social network's capability of recording different types of posts begins to expand. And not everything has to be a subclass of post. In fact, we could change our hierarchy so that there are posts that allow comments and posts that don't allow comments. So in this case, we could strip the pieces of the comments out of the post class, and maybe we just want events to have a username and a timestamp, and you don't get to comment on events. But for commented post extends post, and then message post is a commented post, which is also a post, or a photo post is a commented post, which is also a post. And so we can begin to further localize where certain types of code should exist and allow for the possibility that there should be event types that don't have the features of allowing comments on it. Okay, so why do we worry about inheritance? It helps us to avoid code duplication. It encourages code reuse, because by putting things at the appropriate level of the hierarchy, if we need to use that code again, we just make a new class that extends it. It is easier to maintain, and as I mentioned, it allows for greater extendability of the problem space. So take a break from the lectures, go do the assignments as listed. When you come back, we're going to try to give some more concrete definitions so that we can talk about this using the jargon of computer science.